And awesome, guys. So yes, welcome back to webinar number 2 of our series, Creating Work-Life Harmony, where today we're going to be talking about dealing with toxic people. And yes, it is Webinar Wednesday. Adrian, thank you for joining us again. If you're joining me for the first time, welcome to Coachology. And if you're here again joining us, welcome to come back. We do love to see you guys. So I've got a couple of very simple slides to share with you today, guys. We've got 45 minutes. Let's jump straight in. Dealing with toxic people. Let's take a look. Communication, leadership, coaching workshops, conflict resolution, conflict management are all topics that I'm teaching all around the world, virtually, face-to-face. If your organization is interested in something like this, contact me directly. So it's a 3-part series, as I mentioned. Last week, we looked at module number 1, which was maintaining mindfulness, simply being more aware about what is important to you. What are your values, and beginning to create harmony from that way. Take a look at our YouTube channel. If you missed module number 1, just search Coachology on YouTube and you'll find at least 50 odd videos, webinars, content, leadership coaching based info there. And we're right here today, module number 2, dealing with toxic people. And of course, next week, same time, same channel, we'll be moving on to module number 3. So go ahead and block your calendars for that one. So let's start with a very, very basic definition, which is toxic is very harmful, right? Or unpleasant, very harmful or unpleasant. You can think about food being toxic. You can think about people being toxic. You can think about chemicals being toxic. Whatever it is, it's harmful or unpleasant. I'm not a dietitian, so we're not going to talk about food today. What we are going to talk about is people, and more importantly, how you can manage or deal with those toxic people as they turn up in your life. And one of the first things that we need to do is we need to keep calm. What do I mean by calm? Well, those of you that know me know that I love my little acronyms. So calm, as an acronym, C stands for compassion. And this is just a good, skill to have in yourself, is to be able to be compassionate about what might be going on with that other person and why they might be toxic. Doesn't give them an excuse, doesn't make it okay. It just helps us to be more aware that there's something else going on behind their kind of external behavior. We'll look at each of these in more detail. A is awareness. L is the learning opportunity that toxic person brings to you. And then M is minimize your proximity. Right? In other words, how close you are to them. You want to minimize that. So let's take a look at these one by one and have a deeper understanding of how to deal with this. So the first one, C, in calm, is compassion. What do I mean by compassion? Is that toxic behavior in people, whoever it is, guys, family, friends, previous friends, exes, ex-partners, ex-business partners, ex-bosses, colleagues, whoever they are. This is a beautiful term that I heard from Dr. Sue Morter. When she describes ego, and I'm talking about King Kong kind of ego, as my wife, Coach Christy, likes to call it, Dr. Sue calls it protective personality, which makes total sense, right? So what do we mean by that? Is these people that have this kind of toxic behavior, that, talk down to people, that cause drama, that make you problem, that are unpleasant or harmful and so on, chances are something happened in their past. Often as a child, we don't know what it is. We don't need to know what it is, right? They might have just been lacking love. Their parents may have got divorced. It might have been something more serious, like there was some kind of abuse, physical, emotional, or whatever. Chances are something happened in their childhood. And as we develop our own little personalities and we develop our own little ego, well, what happens is, depending on that amount of trauma or that negativity, that negative emotion, those significant kind of negative events that happened in the past, we build up this wall, right? This protective personality to protect ourselves from the big bad world out there. And so, most of the acting out that people do, shouting and being toxic and doing all those things that toxic people do, then often they're protecting some hurt, emotionally damaged child, inner child within them. Now, again, this does not give them the excuse to behave the way that they do. And in fact, in the chat box now, guys, tell me, in your experience when dealing with toxic people, what kind of behavior are they displaying, right? As you define someone as toxic, what is it that they are doing? What kind of behavior? How do they talk? What actions are they doing or not doing? Tell me in the chat box what has been your experience with toxic people in the past. Go ahead and drop that into the chat box for me. Yeah, bullying is a big one. Yeah, they'll bully you. And when we think of bully, I think of, the little dog syndrome. The little dogs that like they're yap, 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 but they don't really bite. When I think of a bully, that's what I think of. I think of one of those little lap dogs that's just bark, 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 all talk and no action. Now, of course, some bullies are bullies and they will get physical. What else we got? Yeah, sniping comments, those little narky kind of snipey kind of, those comments that just really purposefully push people's buttons, right? So what they're trying to do to protect themselves, it's easier to protect themselves to put other people down. If everyone else is less than me, then it helps me to look like the big man or the big woman. So oftentimes there is a real lack of self-worth or self-love in that person who's being toxic, who's doing that bullying, who's making those kinds of comments to bring other people down around them, because they just don't know how to authentically do that on their own. Yeah, what are some other examples here? Yeah, looking down and all the time, cynical, like Mr. or Mrs. Negativity, right? This is gonna go wrong. That's gonna go wrong. They have a problem for every solution, right? Times 10. Yeah, what else? Persistent nagging, and that's like those little dogs. They just nag and nag and nag and nag and nag. So at some point, we can have somewhat of some compassion or empathy for them. If we know beyond their behavior that there's a wounded little child, sometimes we call it a man child, right? Where there's a little child trapped inside that big ego, that big protective personality. They're afraid to get found out. They might have those emotions of guilt or shame or anger or sadness or betrayal or feeling unloved or whatever it was. And as a kid, we blow it out into so much bigger proportion than maybe that it was. But then that becomes our filter on how we perceive the world around us. So we build up this massive big wall, this protective personality that says, don't get close to me. Right? I'm just a vulnerable little mess inside, and I don't want anyone to find out who I really am. So if we are aware that that's kind of perhaps what's going on at their inner level, it can help us to have a little bit more compassion for them. And in a certain way, as we can appreciate that, we don't actually have to take it personally, right? Because we know they're that little yappy dog. then what do we do when we see a yappy dog now? We're like, aren't you cute? Aren't you cute? Come here, you little noisy yappy dog, right? We know it can't really hurt us. It might like have a little nip at our leg or our finger or something, but it's not really going to hurt us. And most bullies are a lot like that. They're a lot of talk and no action, right? So this is the first thing that I want to share, guys. To be calm when dealing with these toxic people is to be non-reactive, right? They love when you try to push back. They love when you try to fight back. They love when you sink down to their level. So don't, right? Just have compassion for them. Wow, bless them. Yeah, this is how I say it in my mind. Bless you that you have that going on in your body, whatever that is. Bless you. I don't have to be judgmental about it. I don't have to have sympathy for it. I can have a little bit of empathy and a little bit of compassion for them. And just know that they're simply trying to protect that wounded child, that wounded adolescent inside of them. We don't need to know exactly what happened. We just know that there was something probably from their childhood. So that's C, compassion. Next one. And of course, guys, if you have any questions, please pop them into the chat box. The A in calm is awareness. So I want you to begin to pay attention when you're experiencing this toxicity from these different people in your environment. How does that toxicity feel in your body, right? What kind of emotions does it stir up? What kind of thoughts begin to go through your mind? Certainly back when I was a lot younger, when I struggled with this, when I was attracting a lot of toxicity into my experience called life, I would have these in-depth conversations about how I would have revenge on that person, or how I would get back at them, or, if they said something toxic or narky, or like, I'd replay that scenario and how could I get them back, right? How could I be smarter than them? How can I make them feel less than me? So just begin to be aware of how that toxicity shows up in your body, in your mind, with the thoughts that you have, the sensations in your body. Do you get hot and flushed? Do you feel embarrassed? Do you get angry? Just become aware of how it triggers you, because being aware is part of the battle, because then you can actually begin to deal with it as you are aware of it. Who triggers those feelings? So is it a specific type of people, for example? Like, is it authority figure, like bosses or policemen or women, or the government? Is it primarily men? Is it primarily women? Is it, what kind of people is it that triggers that toxicity in you? Because here's the important thing. You can't change that person, whoever's triggering these feelings of this toxicity. It's not your job to educate them or to fix them or to coach them or to make them better. That is outside of the scope of your responsibility. Your job is to simply be more aware and then to choose a different response. All right. And if you can begin to be aware of who is toxic in your life, well, that's a very, very good step, because, as we have problems and challenges in our life, as humans, we're really, really good at snowballing all of those little problems that we have until it just feels like one big problem. So you want to kind of, blow the smoke away and get really focused on who is toxic in your life. And you might want to ask yourself, where are your boundaries, right? Is this person walking all over you because they can? Because you let them? Have you drawn the line in the sand to say to them, this is not acceptable, right? So again, at this point here, it's to simply be aware. It's not to, criticize yourself. It's not to judge yourself. It's not to feel bad that this has been happening for so long. No, have that spotlight of awareness And you might become aware that, yeah, maybe my boundaries aren't clear. Maybe I have not fully expressed my expectations to that person, right? So a really good way to set your clear boundaries with those people that you feel might be toxic is to simply share your expectations with them. Don't assume that they know how to treat you, because they might be treating everyone else like shit in their life, does not give them permission to treat you like shit. So oftentimes, and we've seen this in all these Hollywood movies where the person being bullied stands up to the bully. Well, what they're doing is they're drawing a line in the sand to say, no, I won't accept this anymore. These are my boundaries. This is not okay. And to be able to express that in a calm manner, right? Remember, the problem with wrestling with a pig in the mud, right? In other words, if the pig is wrestling in the mud and you lower yourself to their level, you know the problem with that? The pig likes it, right? So don't wrestle in the mud with the pig. You do not have to lower your standards to where they are. No, you can maintain your own integrity. You can draw that line in the sand and you can set your own boundary. So become more aware, are people stepping across your boundary? And if so, begin to think of a way that you can, express where those boundaries exist, thereby preventing those people, or less likely that they're going to get up in your face. Make sense? Is there a pattern? So what do I mean by that? Is the same type of toxicity showing up in different people. So for example, if your definition of toxicity might be that someone is, making those really snarky, really kind of negative comments to you, and you see that it's one person, well, as you begin to be more aware, are you seeing that there's maybe 2 or 3 or maybe even more people who kind of fit that same character? So in other words, you're getting that same kind of toxicity, in this example, this kind of those snarky kind of comments. Is it coming in multiple directions? If so, there's a clue there. There is a nugget of gold if you begin to identify patterns of toxicity showing up in your life, whether it's family or work or a total stranger or whatever. If you can see that pattern of that toxic behavior, whatever it is, the one that pushes your buttons the most, that is going to be a clue for you. So again, at this point here, as you're being calm, you're simply creating more awareness of how this toxicity is showing up in your life. Who is it? At what point are they crossing the boundary? And is it the same kind of toxicity happening again and again and again? Could be. In your personal criteria, how do you define your boundaries? Well, this will, but great question, Jenny, thank you. Clearly, our own personal boundaries are going to evolve over time. I would say in the past, I was a walkover. People could, be toxic with me. They could demand this, they could complain that. I was attracting angry people and all sorts because I just didn't know what I didn't know. And so up to a certain point, you get really clear on what your values are and what is important to you, then you just clearly identify your boundaries. And what do I mean by that? Very simply is, I don't like this in my life, and I do like this in my life, right? And Esther Hicks, who's famous for the law of attraction, she's got many, many books and lots of free content on YouTube, Esther Hicks and Abraham. She says part of our life experience is contrast. In other words, if everything was perfect and sunshine and rainbows 24/7, life would actually be a little bit dull. So as we go through life, we purposefully, and according to her, we came down to this experience called life to create joy in our life, and to build things, like not just physical things, but to create, yeah, her words. Now, in order to know what we really, really want and that we really, really like, we kind of need to have an understanding of what it is that we don't like and what it is that we don't want to experience in our life. So as we experience this, then now we know what we do want. And then we put our focus and attention on what we do want. So for example, I have a very, very good friend who I used to live down in Koh Samui. And as I was living down there, I became friends with a few different people down there. And then I moved up here to Bangkok almost 10 years ago now. And then one particular friend, let's call him Bobby. Bobby, I loved like a brother. And Bobby was a little bit of a negative Nancy. And so even though Bobby is quite a funny guy, he's very extrovert, he's out there, he's living life large. Whenever we would kind of get into a meaningful kind of conversation, I found that it always tended towards the negative. Always, always, and always. And so this first point here, guys, how does toxicity show up in your body? To me, I felt the negativity. And I simply decided, you know what? I don't want to feel that anymore. So when he would call me up, and after a little while, and we talk about, good stuff. What have you been doing? What have you been doing? Oh, this is good and that's good. When the kind of conversation started to run out of, updates, it would then go on this negative path. And then I just had to say to him, okay, Bobby, I've got to go now, right? So we're jumping ahead a little bit here now. But there's a couple of ways that you can do it. I would just cut the conversation short, making up some excuse that I need to go. Sometimes I just sat down with him and I just said, listen, Bobby, I love you like a brother. And I've noticed in our recent conversations, after like 10 or 15 minutes, they take a real negative turn and they go down this route that I just don't want to go down. And I'd rather not talk about that stuff. Just for the sake of talking. So, that's where I'm at, Bobby. And he got it, right? He got it. And then I would just distance myself even more so that, maybe we would speak once a week. Then that went to once every 2 weeks to then maybe once a month. Yeah. And so I knew my boundaries, that I did not want that because it just didn't feel good in my body. Right. And then so I actually started by having an adult conversation with him. And then when it continued, I just said, look, listen, no. Now, sometimes, it's in my nature. I'm a coach. I do want to help people, but I'm not going to listen to someone blah, 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 blah for the sake of these empty words, because if there's no action steps after it, then it's just called venting. Right. And that's okay. Not all the time, because otherwise, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So this was an example of how I would help to define my own boundaries by knowing what I didn't want, and then knowing what I want, knowing what I want to feel in my body, and then being able to have that conversation. So just notice if there's the same kind of toxicity showing up in other people. You're looking for that pattern, right? So this is awareness. The next little part in calm, L, is the learning opportunity. So whoever shows up in your life, whether they're an angel, whether they're an awesome mentor or a coach, or whether there's someone that pushes your buttons or someone you might define as toxic, that is a learning opportunity for you, right? It's an absolute learning opportunity for you. That toxic person, now follow me here, I'm going to take it to the extreme point here, guys. That toxic person that's showing up in your life, especially if there's a pattern, right? If you are experiencing the same kind of toxicity again and again and again, then it could be, I'm not saying it is, but it could be that behavior that you're observing in those different people can be a reflection of your own behavior, right? Now, I know you're thinking, oh, look, that's bullshit. I would never, ever do that kind of behavior. I didn't make these rules, guys. This is from the universe. This is how the universe operates. This is to help us become aware of our blind spot. So another example, many, many years ago, 15 years ago, I liked an alcoholic beverage or three. And it really got to the point where I actually was drinking too much. I was working in the hotel industry. I was working 6 or 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day. The only way that I could relax at that time was with a couple of beers. Well, then, of course, a couple of beers would turn into a couple more and a couple more and so on. Anyway, long story short, I began to attract this level of toxicity into my life, which was the universe's gift of showing me that I was out of control. What do I mean by that? The girlfriend that I had at the time was drinking excessively. And you know, it's so easy to see it in other people rather than look in the mirror and see it within ourselves. So she was drinking too much. I had one or two colleagues at the hotel that I was working at. They were drinking too much. They would go AWOL. They would just disappear for 2 days and never call me. Now, I never thought that I had that big of a problem. I would always turn up to work, maybe a little bit like, a little bit hangover, a little bit tired, but I would always turn up. Yet the universe, in its wisdom, was giving me these mirrors in people in my close proximity that were displaying the same kind of behavior that I was doing. Yeah, so that's an example of, now, as I became aware of that, I thought, holy shit, I'm not setting I'm not being a good role model here. I was a leader at the time. I was in a relationship at the time. I'm not leading by example. I'm simply attracting and reflecting the kind of behavior that I was doing. Right, so I backed down on my drinking, and then at this one hotel, it was a 5-star hotel. It was newly opened. I was the acting general manager, and after about 3 months, it was brand new, shiny 5-star hotel in beautiful Koh Samui. Here I am. I just started the job. I'm 3 months into the job. I'm acting general manager. You know, I'm meeting and talking and planning and creating with the owner of the hotel. You know, we're direct communication. It was, you know, brand new. And then they hired a GM. Well, poor Luke. His ego, his protective personality was smashed down to the ground. All of those meetings that I was having with the owners, they all went away. And you know what made things worse? This GM that they hired, he was a total douchebag. Total. Like a real piece of work. And I had people complaining to me, oh, Luke, can you make him go away? And, oh, Luke, do you know he said this? And, oh, Luke, do you know he wants me to do that? And, oh, my God, make it stop. And I got one awesome piece of advice from one of my mentors previously, which was to tend my own garden. So tend means take care of, right? To take care of my own garden. And so early on in the piece, when this new GM arrived, he said, so Luke, I'm the boss man now. And he said, look, I'll take care of the overall hotel operation, and I'll take care of food and beverage, basically the restaurant and the kitchen. He said, Luke, you can do rooms division, which is front office, housekeeping, engineering, and gardening. And I said, yep, okay. And so I remembered this advice, tend your own garden. Now, because I could have thrown this guy under the bus a dozen times, 100 times. He was toxic, he was nasty, he was negative, he was manipulative, he was all of these things. And I just said to myself, I'm going to make my rooms division, this area that's within my control, I'm going to make it the best on Koh Samui. Right, and that's exactly what I did. I just did my best to block out his negativity. If ever he gave me a direct instruction, I would do it. I would follow the instructions like a good little boy, and I did what I could do in my garden to take care of my garden. I would take the weeds out, I would water it, I would fertilize it, I would take care of my stuff, I would defend my staff, right? If ever he was trying to attack them, I would be like, you're going to talk to me, all right? I'm going to take care. And so I protected them, and this went on for about 3 months. After about 4 months total, it came up for his probation. He was at the end of the probation, and the owner of the hotel said, see you later. This isn't working out. Bye-bye. So basically he left. They called me into the office and they said, Luke, we don't know how you did it. We don't know how you kept your calm during this process, but we really admire it and we really respect it. Congratulations, you have the role of GM and we're going to double your salary. And I said, thank you very much, right? So this was an experience, a real life experience on how I was able to deal with the toxicity by just tending my own garden, because I knew, and other words that my mentor shared with me, he said, Luke, he said, when he's talking about karma, right? And he says, Luke, Buddha will take care of the details. Yeah, Buddha, he said, don't you worry about it. Just tend your own garden, do the best that you can do, and the universe, Buddha, Jesus, however you want to call it, will balance the books. It's outside of your scope. You don't need to worry about it. Just do the right thing, all right? And the truth will reveal itself over time. And so that's what I did. Yeah. Does that make sense, guys? So what, at the extreme is this behavior. Could it be a reflection of yourself like it was with me with my drinking too much? Or what can you learn? And I learned so much during this 3 to 4 month period. I learned emotional intelligence. I learned to bite my tongue, and not like that. But there was one day when he caused a real problem. And then I really got up in his face. I said, hey, we had this line in the sand. You were taking care of that. I was taking care of this. You stepped over that line. You did that thing and it totally screwed something up in my department. Not okay. Don't let it happen again. And I didn't know how it was going to work out, but it absolutely redefined the boundaries that we had created together. That line in the sand, right? And I call that, what can we call that? It's like productive use of emotion. Maybe that's a topic for another webinar. Let me know if you're interested. You can use emotion productively, right, to get an outcome. You can use things like anger in a productive way in order to get an outcome. Anyway, that's a topic for another day. So yeah, what can you learn from this toxicity? And coming back to over here, as you become more aware, right, then you can see what can you learn here? How can you grow? And there's literally 100 different ways that you can grow by taking care of your own garden. Because here's the thing, why worry about things that are outside of your control? There'll be nothing that you can do about it. So just focus on what you can control. In my example, I still played nicely, right? I did not resist his requests. I did not drag my feet. I did not try to catch him out. I did not throw him under the bus to the big bosses, even though I could have on 100 different times. I just waited and I waited and I waited. The truth was revealed, and then I got the rewards. And M in calm is minimize your proximity. So proximity simply means how close you are. So in that example I shared about Bobby, who was a bit of a negative Nancy, I just spoke to him less, right? So all, at the most simple and fundamental, guys, minimize your time around toxic people. That's the most simple and most elegant advice I could probably give on this topic, is to simply minimize your time around those toxic people. Now, I know it's easier said than done. I get that. I appreciate that. And I respect that. And you can still find very, very creative ways to minimize your time around them. Think about it. You know, you might be on your own personal development journey. You might have a group of friends. Maybe you went to school with them. Maybe you went to university with them. Maybe there's some colleagues from another company that you used to work at before. But coming back to the awareness in Calm, if you are now more aware that those people, they might not be full-blown toxic, yet there might be some behavior, that negative, those snidey, that's like overly sarcastic or whatever it is. As you can look at it now from a more detached perspective, you might be able to see, yeah, okay, they're a little bit negative. You know, for example, when I left Australia, I went backpacking around the world for 1 year. I arrived to Thailand. I started working in the hotel industry. And so I was backpacking a year, and then I was working in Samui for a year. And then I finally went home, right? So I was away for 2 years. And well, when I got back, I wanted to see everyone. I wanted to see all of my old friends, the buddies I went to school with, the buddies I used to hang out with, the party dudes, the party girls. And I tried to connect with as many people as possible. Well, I tell you what, at the end of that 2-week holiday, I was exhausted. I was exhausted because I just realized, and it wasn't until after the experience, I realized that I had grown over that 2 years of being away. 1 year backpacking, 1 year in Koh Samui, working in the hospitality industry, something I'd never done before. I'd simply changed and I'd grown, where it felt like many of the people that I connected with, not all of them, of course, but many of them were still doing the same things, having the same problems, the same drama, the same kind of negativity. And again, being able to look at it from a more outside, detached perspective. And I'm not talking about judgment here, guys. People can do what they want to do. I'm not here to tell people what to do. I just became aware that I didn't want to be doing that anymore. And so that's what I would invite you to do. Be aware, is there a level of toxicity there that you're not okay with now? Does it feel good in your body? It's very simple. When you meet that person, do you feel good in your body or do you not feel good in your body? That's it. And if you don't feel good in your body, then you simply need to minimize. And guys, it doesn't matter if you were bestest of best buddies at school. It doesn't mean if they were your study partner at university. It doesn't matter if you were together for 20 years. If you don't feel good around that person anymore, you notice this pattern of toxicity again and again and again, minimize it. It's okay to do a detox, right? Detoxification, that's what they call it. You can do a detox with food and you can do a detox with people. So it's pretty easy with friends. But Luke, what about those people that I have to work with that are toxic, right? Again, minimize your engagement with them. And then if you have to work with them on a regular basis, you may need to have an adult conversation with them. You may need to share your expectations with them. You probably will need to give them some kind of direct feedback, and you simply have an adult conversation with them, right? So you can check out some of our other webinars. I'm pretty sure we've done one about, delivering effective feedback or having straight talk. It's basically simply sharing your expectations, yeah? And you can simply say to them that this is a really simple script that you can use, right? So you're with your work colleague, take them out for a coffee or something like that, and you can say, listen, John, in my role as whatever your role is, please tell me, John, tell me your expectations of me. So then, John will be a bit shocked at first and just say, listen, John, I want us to work together nicely. I want us to create more synergy. We have a job to do. So just tell me, John, I just want to remove any assumptions and I just want us to get really, really aligned moving forward. We're not going to worry about the past. The past is the past. And so this is really good for that kind of those people where you just feel a bit like, And then John says whatever John says, and you write it down, and you write it down, and you write it down, and you say, thank you. And you do your best not to react, right? Not at this point. So John says what he says. John is basically sharing what his expectations are of you. Then, of course, when that's finished, you then reciprocate. So you'll say, John, ask me, John, because John doesn't know this technique. And he'll say, oh, yeah, okay. Then he'll say, okay, yeah, well, Luke, in my role as blah, 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 whatever his role is at the organization, please share with me your expectations of me so we can create greater synergy. And you say, oh, thank you, John. I'm so glad that you asked. And then, keeping calm, you share what your expectations are. Now, John might try to interrupt you and you say, John, come on. I let you just share just now and I didn't interrupt at all. Come on, we agreed that this is going to be an adult conversation. Please let me finish and then we can have a discussion about it. So you share your expectations. Now, guess what? At least now you got two pieces of paper with those expectations from both sides. Then you can begin another adult conversation, almost like a negotiation about, okay, I can do point 1, 2, and 4. Let's talk more about number 3, because I think that's outside of my scope, or that's not quite relevant, or not sure that I can. And then at least you'll be a lot closer to be in alignment because you've been able to share your expectations. And those expectations might be that he doesn't talk down to people at the meeting. That expectation might be that he doesn't roll his eyes every time someone has a different idea than him. So you simply share what those expectations are. Doesn't guarantee that it'll fix everything overnight, and it's a step in the right direction. The third type of category is going to be family. And there's only one thing that I can say here, guys. It doesn't matter. If you got toxic people in your life, I don't care if they're your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, whoever they are, you've got it. Your mental health is more important than anything else, right? And so if you have parents that are narcissistic, if you have a sibling that just is always out to get you, remember, a pig likes playing in the mud. Don't lower yourself to their level. Right? And have zero expectations on family, because they're just operating on their programs from the past. So practice your compassion, right? Just like, they just have their program from the past. They're probably not even aware, but you're aware now. You're aware that they're living on a habit and a program, and that's just the way that they are. And it's unlikely that you could say or do anything that's going to change them. So just get to a point of acceptance. Don't take it personally and simply minimize your time around them. Yeah. Cool. Adrian says things may be out of control. You can determine how you respond to them. Exactly. We've done a whole webinar on emotional intelligence, guys. Check out our YouTube channel on that. We just touched on it a little bit today. You want to look at that deeper, have a look at some of our other YouTube videos. Thank you for that, Adrian. So just minimize your proximity, right? Just do whatever you need to do to distance yourself from them. Your mental health is the most important thing for you. So in summary, guys, keep calm with compassion, awareness, learning opportunity. That could be the toughest, especially if there's that pattern of behavior. You see it in multiple people. It could be a reflection or a partial reflection on some kind of behavior that you are not aware of, a behavior that you don't know that you are displaying outwardly into the world, especially if you're seeing it as a pattern. Minimize your proximity. In other words, give yourself some space or some distance away from that toxic person. So if you've got any questions, guys, pop them into the chat box now. And if you'd like to explore this deeper, especially your emotional intelligence, 30 different communication tools, techniques, and strategies on how you can talk with those toxic and difficult people. Come and join us for the NLP 4-in-1 certification, starting in just a couple of weeks, number 7 to 11 of July. You can join us virtually from anywhere in the world, or you can join us right here in Bangkok. Special investment because you've joined us here on the webinar today. And for those looking to exploring becoming a professional coach, whether it's a life coach or business coach or relationship coach or however, please, you would love to get yourself ICF certified. And that's happening 16 to 17 of July if you join us virtually. There is some pre-study though, so you want to get started on that very, very soon. Then you join us virtually on 16 and 17 of July. Or you can join us face-to-face in Bangkok from number 14 to 17 of July. That's 4 days. So ladies and gents, thank you all very, very much. I hope you enjoyed today's session. Any questions, as always, you feel free to send me a message, send me an email. I'd love to support you guys on your journey. Until next week, come back for module number 3 on creating work-life harmony. Until next time, thank you guys. Ciao, ciao. Stay cool, stay awesome, stay calm. Bye-bye.